Okay. All right. Eric, you got the ring light? You good? You set up?
I'm not going to get any better looking, that's for sure. But,
cool. Eric, Anthony, Luis, thanks all for joining. I was telling the guys before you hopped on, Luis, that the common thread is I believe in everything that you guys are doing as founders and as people creating products. And I'm really passionate about things becoming assets. Like when I was a kid, when I was 16, maybe like 14 or 13, I would take shoes, like Jordan shoes from Craigslist and flip them on eBay. And now all of a sudden there's a marketplace for investing in shoes as an asset. And so this is where this like relates to my life. And the common thread is all of you guys are doing that in different areas of the world. I thought we'd start off with some intros because two of us are meeting here for the first time, and it'd be nice to level set on who's who.
Sweet. Sounds great.
Cool. Just jump in. Yeah.
How do you want to do it?
All right, I can go first.
Please. Yeah.
So, Luis, good to meet you. I'm Anthony. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of Vinovest. We exist to make investing in fine wines and rare whiskeys possible. So, we really want to be able to take something that has traditionally been only for ultra wealthy people to be able to invest in, collect in, and make it more accessible, make it more friendly, and get more people to be able to know about this great asset class. I've known Chino for several years. Eric also for a few years in the alt asset space, and good to excited to meet you as well.
Cool. Eric, want to jump in?
Sure. So, Luis, I'm the founder and CEO of Alto, also known by many people as AltoIRA, and that's because we enable individuals to access their retirement savings to invest in alternative assets. So things like wine and rare whiskeys, which, by the way, was not part of the original business plan, Anthony, but I think is a fantastic ad. And all kinds of other real assets, whether it's artwork or Rolex watches or securitized collectibles in terms of automobiles or all sorts of things, but also more traditional in air quotes, private equity, venture capital, private credit opportunities, and less traditional crypto. So really enabling individuals to invest in those assets that they're interested in, that they want to learn about, that they want to do due diligence on, and that they believe will outperform public equities. And so that's what we do at Alto. And just to give you a sense of size, we're now about 1.2 billion in assets under custody and 30,000 clients. So, and I think give or take like 80 investment platform partners representing all sorts of asset verticals. So it's been exciting.
Cool, Luis.
Nice. I knew both of your platforms before actually getting into the call. So it's exciting to meet you. I have been reading a lot about alternative assets. And this newsletter called alts.co, I don't know if you follow that. But I have heard, and probably in a lot of newsletters, I also have heard about Vinovest and everything. So that's cool. So I'm actually, this is my second venture. I'm founder of a digital media company that is one of the biggest digital companies in Latam that is called Cultura Colectiva. We have around 30 million unique users and more than 50 million followers on social media. I'm actually letting a CEO to run the company, and I'm just creating this new company as we speak. So Cubic is fractionalized ownership of blue chip art. So it's pretty similar to Masterworks, but at the same time super different because we're using NFTs instead of using shares of a company. And that gives a lot of different things into investing in these fractionalized assets. The first one is you can start investing at just $50 instead of, the $50K that starting point of Masterworks. The second thing is that you have a lot of secondary markets as OpenSea or different in which you can sell your NFTs and then you get a lot of liquidity from that. And I would say there's a lot of things going around your crypto in which you can put your NFT as a collateral in different protocols, and then you get money for that. So it's very similar to Masterworks, but at the same time super different because we're using these NFTs as the technology behind fractionalizing assets. So we have done like 2 artworks in the last 2 months without any marketing. We already have around 500 investors investing around, it's super new. So it's around $150K US dollars in the last 2 months. And that's it. I mean, I'm actually just closing the series, the pre-series, pre-seed the round with different investors also in these months.
Yeah, I thought this would be a good match because, again, all of you, the pattern is alternative investing. And I was telling the guys before you hopped on, Luis, like you guys are pre-seed, Eric's at Series B, and Anthony's at Series A. And the reason why I have friends who are like 65 or 70 is because I get to like look around the corner. And I thought this would be a good match for all of you. Can you guys each get into very briefly the origin story of this? I know, Anthony, like when you started Vinovest, I'm like, there's no other guy to start that company than Anthony ZHANG, because when we hang out, you'd just be always talking about wines or on the weekend kind of prospecting wines. And I'm like, and the only thing you post about in your Instagram story is wines. And I'm like, there's nothing else you could do. Eric, I want to hear yours because
he's like a celebrity athlete,
Yeah.
He doesn't talk about sports. He just talks about wine.
Yeah, I like to drink. What can I say?
And Eric, I'd love to hear yours as well because I'm not sure that you had an obsession with IRAs, but I don't know if that's true or not. But does someone want to start? Just jump in.
Eric, you want to kick it off, or?
Sure. I'll jump in because
by the way, Gino, should we be recording all this, or are you recording?
Yeah, it's recording. It's recording on Loom, so it's not through Zoom. Okay. So yeah.
So age before beauty, Anthony. So I'll go for it. So back in 2013, when I was still playing at being a venture capitalist, I was investing alongside the fund. And one of those days, and Anthony's probably heard this story actually. One of those days, and I don't know about you guys, but I open mail like once every quarter. And this must have been like that day in the quarter, and my IRA statement showed up. And probably more out of curiosity than anything else, I opened it up because A, I forgot that I had an IRA, and B, I didn't know what was in it. So I opened it up and I had the proverbial sort of entrepreneurial light bulb moment of, holy shit, this is the money I should use to be making portfolio company investments, not my checking and savings. And the reason is actually quite simple and twofold. The first is, from a duration matching standpoint, your IRA or any retirement money is by definition long-term money. And you should be thinking about it in terms of long-term investments. Alternative assets, which are mostly illiquid in nature, that's changing with a lot of what's happening today. But many alternative assets historically are illiquid in nature. And so you can't expect to have any liquidity for somewhere between 7 and 12 years. A lot of people will like to just say 10. If you get lucky, it could be 7, maybe 6, maybe 5, but more realistically, 10 to 12 years. And so from a duration matching standpoint, it made sense to use my retirement money. And as well as from a tax advantage and return standpoint, it made sense to use IRA money because you're looking for alpha returns with alternative assets. And if you're lucky enough to get one, you'd like to preserve as much of it as possible. And the best way to do that is with tax advantage money. And so the only problem was I didn't know if you could actually do that, right? So I went to Google and I typed in invest IRA in private company. And the really long story short is that it directed me to the self-directed IRA industry. I figured out how to make my first investment. I had this terrible experience that took 10 weeks to execute. So like any other person with a personality disorder, I did it a couple more times, and it got worse. And so I had identified the systemic problem with the self-directed IRA industry. And then the question for me as a former investment banker and venture capitalist was whether or not it's a big enough market opportunity to try and fix. And it turns out that we've got, more than $30 trillion sitting in retirement accounts, a tiny fraction invested in alternative assets. Mm-hmm. And I thought if I could do for the alternative IRA investing market what TurboTax had done for self-filing, eliminate the people in the paper, build a scalable solution that could serve millions of people rather than tens of thousands and do it in a cost-effective way, then we could build a big business. And so that's, for better or for worse, that's the origin story.
Anthony?
Yeah, let's see. I just sold my first company, Ongoing Now, which was a food delivery app for college campuses, and was just kind of starting my journey as an investor. So dabbling in real estate, crypto, starting to do some angel investing. And actually my now wife sent me an article from Bloomberg, and it said, luxury assets of the ultra rich, outperforms S&P or something really, really sexy of a headline. And I saw that list, there's like cars, watches, wine, whiskey. And I was like, oh, wine and whiskey. That's pretty cool. I'd always been interested in wine. Always thought the idea of like owning a cellar once I'm richer would be a cool thing to do. And then when I looked into the returns, I was like, holy cow, right? It's like double-digit annual returns on something that I really understood and appreciated, right? I know why they say wine gets better with age, right? And why it gets more expensive with age. So I was like, all right, I want to make some money by collecting wine, and maybe I can flip some and that can offset my very expensive drinking habit. So I looked on the market. There was really nothing that really satisfied me. On one side of the market, you had private equity funds of wine where traditional 5-year, 10-year lock-ins, and you had to be pretty wealthy to be able to get access to these deals. On the other side, it was very much so just like you go to your broker, right? Same with the art world. You have to know a broker and you kind of trust that person on their connections. And then when it comes to like storage, insurance, custody, auctions, all of those, you kind of need different people for, honestly, a team for. And that kind of led me to the conclusion of like, all right, this is why ultra wealthy people do this. It's because like you need a whole staff to properly manage this. And to me, that just didn't really sit right. I was like, all right, I think if I can make an easier solution for myself, and as I kind of just dove deeper into that path and realized like, all right, there's some automations here. There's some storage providers that we can kind of link up, and kind of just built this, kind of cobbled together solution for myself. And I started being able to pick wines on an automated basis, because I liked wines to drink, but those are very different than wines that you would purchase for investment. And this algorithm that I started building was actually outperforming the market when I was putting it on back-tested models. And I was like, all right, this is pretty cool. Started telling some friends about it. People who I knew did not like wine were being like, all right, I'll put $5,000, $10,000 in here, just to kind of being interested on it from an asset standpoint. And that was kind of my light bulb moment. I'm like, if we can even get people who don't give a crap about wine and don't even drink to invest like $10,000 into wine, like there's no way they would spend that kind of money on wine, even if they'd like to drink. But thinking of it as an investment or an asset is what kind of can unlock a lot more flow and funds into the industry. That was why Vinovest was created, is like, all right, let's financialize this asset class. Let's make it a lot easier and accessible and transparent for people to be able to get in and manage their money. And we can be able to really give more access to this asset class that was really like you have to be 10 million net worth or more to really play in this field properly type of thing. So that was kind of my light bulb moment.
Luis?
So, I have been really into blockchain probably like since like 5 or 7 years ago or 6 years ago, more or less. I actually, in my first company, we did a token that gives you these tokens because you're giving all your data or your browsing data in our webpage on different things. that was really interesting for us. And then we actually launched an NFT marketplace like 3 years ago. So
really early.
So because of that, probably 6 months ago, a girl that runs one of the biggest art galleries in Mexico came and said, okay, I know there's a way in which we can match, NFTs, crypto, or blockchain and art, and we can do something together. So we started, talking, and we realized, very similar to wine, that this is like an asset class, that it's only for super high net worth individuals, and there's a lot of intermediaries in the market, and there's an opportunity to actually do this really interesting with crypto. So we started. We said, okay, we're gonna launch this landing page with just a link for going to OpenSea, and then a Stripe link if you want to buy it directly with credit card, and we will hold it in our wallet. So that's what we started doing that, and then suddenly in less than 3 weeks we sold out an Andy Warhol, the first piece. So it went and it was pretty interesting to see the reaction of people, that they were saying I always wanted to have an Andy Warhol, but I couldn't have it, and now I can do it. And all other kind of people were saying I always wanted to invest high net worth individually in this asset class, but I can do it before. I couldn't do it before. So it was pretty interesting for us. And at the same time, I believe there's I call this way in which blockchain and probably alternative asset investing is changing society, in which I believe we're going into a new world called collective capitalism, a new wave in which we are organizing ourselves. And I believe most of the assets in the future will be owned not by corporations or high net worth individuals, but rather by communities. Mm-hmm. When an asset is owned by a community, then it's worth more. So for instance, I was having this conversation with the MoMA in New York 2-3 weeks ago, and they were telling me I rather have your Andy Warhol in MoMA than other Andy Warhols, because we're going to have thousands of people that own these assets and will be doing marketing for this and coming to the museum. So in that sense, I believe that we're starting with art, but I think there's a lot of opportunity to do several other real assets into fractions and doing this in the future. I believe in this vision in which most of the assets will be owned by communities in the long term.
Nice.
That's a new idea. That is a new idea.
Yeah. That's really cool. I was going to ask the question of why is it more valuable when it's owned by more people? But the community aspect makes a lot of sense to me.
Networks are very powerful. Absolutely. The thing that's common between the three of your companies and your products, which I love the most, is I think I told you about this on the phone, Anthony, when we were first talking about it. Is I love the idea of a perception change in a business. Is wine a purchase or an investment? Well, it just matters how you look at it. Is art a purchase or an investment? It will just matters how you look at it. And in terms of IRAs, and frankly, I heard about the Peter Thiel story where he invested in Facebook out of his IRA. Now he's about to turn 65 or whatever it is, and that theoretically is tax free.
Not just theoretically.
I hope so. Can you touch on that? Has he liquidated it? Do you know? Because that's your shining use case.
He didn't call me to ask, so I don't know. But he made it out of it. He made the Facebook investment out of a Roth IRA. It was a $500,000 investment, give or take. He made it out of a Roth IRA that turned it into, give or take, $1 billion. That's tax free. That's the bargain we make in America. Mm-hmm. Which is you pay tax today, right? And you put it in a retirement account, so say you can't touch it again until X later date. Mm-hmm. And when you take it out, it's tax free because you already paid your taxes. So if you're a hell of an investor, which he was with that investment, right? Yeah, mm-hmm. I think what Congress was trying to do in terms of changing the rules after the fact, I think is just wrong, right? So if Congress wanted to say today, going forward, if your IRA account grows to $50 million, you can't make any more IRA contributions, fine. Or you can't make any more IRA investments, fine. But let's not go backwards and try and change the rules. The rules are the rules. We made them. We live by them. You don't change the score of the game once the ref blows the whistle. Right? So I think that's just wrong.
Yeah, I think so too. And government has classically been allergic to innovation, which is unfortunate. But I think you just have to keep out innovating to show the value of the innovation. I just finished Super Pumped, which is like the story on Uber, and for better or for worse, they were breaking a lot of those rules. But the rules were made for 60 years ago.
Most of our rules are, by the way. ERISA was created in 1973. Okay, so.
Yeah, I'm there with you. Prohibition really set things back for wine and whiskey. So
1933 and 1934 are the securities laws of 33 and 34 are what rule us today. Like, things have changed. We got to change with them.
Yeah.
People like us are the ones like driving that. And so early stage is early stage for a reason. Like, it won't get to a place where the masses accept it. For example, I was in streaming for 3.5 years, and Netflix carved out a little thing called streaming for 15 years. But then Disney came along in a year's time, 2020, and eclipsed them. So it's like the world likes to do this. The incumbents like to do this wait and see thing. Is there something that you guys did in your journeys where it was a pivotal moment, but you just had to convince them of a perception change as opposed to what you're doing? Because what I've learned in VCs and startups is the numbers are never good enough. You say, we made $1 million last year. Well, come back when you make 2 million and do it in 6 months. Like, is there a part, or is there a time when you've had to transcend the rational? And tell us about that, because I think a lot of people get caught up in the numbers. And the reality is in early projects, the numbers just are never good enough because the data set isn't that deep. And you can do that with excitement or passion. You can do that with intrinsic motivators, et cetera. But I'd like to hear about times that you have faced that kind of predicament at different levels of your career. Eric, you want to go?
I think Luis was about ready to go, so I'm going to let him go.
Yeah,
first.
Jump in, please.
Okay, yeah. So, for me, there are two main things that have helped me a lot. The first one is always having never depending on investors or on one plan. So, for instance, now with Cubic, I'm raising the Series A, but I hope I have a plan on how to do this, bootstrapping the company. And I can go either way. So I always feel safe when I'm talking with an investor. If I get the money, fine. But if I don't get it, I can still do the project without any problem. So I don't know, probably it's both, paths are not the same, but I feel safer when I'm thinking in that sense. No? So that's one thing. And the other part, it's super difficult because I think we are always comparing ourselves with someone else, or, looking at LinkedIn all the time. It's super difficult. So it's always going back to be calm with myself and saying, okay, if I do this in 6 months and if I do it in 9, it's going to be okay. And being fine with myself and not with, comparing with the others. It's always a more comfortable way. And in that sense, it always make things better, then suddenly everything starts to happen better and works better. And so it's difficult to, put shades or stop seeing what everyone else is doing. But that's also has helped me in the past.
I love those too. I think especially, with the year that we're having and, the potential, most likely recession that's coming into, that's so important, right? To have that sort of control and optionality to be not dependent on someone else, right? And And also, if you're not dependent on someone else, why are you looking at other people, right? And like being able to just be like, this is the mission, right? Of course, it's a balance between, being obsessed with the news and competition and being completely blind to the outside world. But I think like I'm definitely with you that I favor more just being heads down, focusing on what I can control and being realistic, right? Like we all have our own paths, and the reason why we're on this path is because we believe it's going to be huge, right? So what's the difference if we grow 20% month over month or 17%, right? It's like over the long run, if we want to build that category defining business, that's, you got to trust yourself and pace yourself too, because it's a long road.
Chena, so I agree with both Luis and Anthony. I think the thing that for a long time was overlooked, but I do believe you hear entrepreneurs and successful entrepreneurs talk about it more in the present than they used to in the past, and that's something we call luck. And anyone who says luck doesn't play a role doesn't realize they got lucky. And for me, I like to say that luck is the intersection of hard work, opportunity, and awareness. And it's that last piece, awareness. Like people have talked about hard work and opportunity for a long time, but I think hard work and opportunity actually hit a lot of people in the face, but they don't see it.
Yeah.
And it's being able to recognize when it's there, and then how to take advantage of it, how to execute on it is a hugely important piece. And then I'll say, I think there are three other things. One is adding the resources you think you need behind the growth you've already achieved. You get in trouble when you add resources ahead of, you're adding resources based on your projections. Well, we all know projections are wrong. Hopefully they're directionally correct, but still they may not be directionally correct enough. And so you get caught short when you're adding resources ahead of the actual growth. So that's one thing. The other two, I think, actually belong together. One is EQ, or that ability to read and relate to people, and to understand what's happening in a room when you're talking to someone, whether they're an investor or a customer or a colleague. And the second piece, which I would combine with EQ, is storytelling, because we're all at the beginning of a story, and this hasn't been written yet. We each have a similar but different version of it, and it's the ability to connect the dots for someone. And storytelling is as old as time, right? Like that's how history was passed down, right? It happened before people could write. And a good storyteller will help paint a picture and connect dots for someone who is at least open to the story. And at least my experience is that good storytellers are captivating individuals, and even if you're not interested in the story, you're still listening. And so that's I don't know if I've added anything to the answer of the question, but that's no,
you have. And so where this hits home for me is, so in my last startup, we had a ton of trouble raising money because it was in media, and the big bag of wolf in the room was like, are you going to get the licenses you need? We didn't end up getting them, but I got the people to help me get the licenses. And he was a guy called John. He was the SVP of business affairs at HBO, the NFL, the NBA. I'm like, oh, this guy's perfect. Found him on LinkedIn. And, by the end of recruiting, when he accepted just pretty much all equity because that's all we had to give him, I was like, John, why are you working for me? You made like $750 last year at HBO. And he goes, well, without skipping a beat, he goes, I love the story. I think you buy the story, and then we can sell the story to the executives at the streaming services. So it's like, when founders vent or over a few drinks or glasses of wine, they go, if only we had more money. I'm like, no one ever has enough money that they need. And so you kind of have to, I think that the soundbite that I walked away from in these few years is everything you want is behind a sales funnel and a story, like the capital, the hire, the landing page. It's all just a story. And I think people under-index on that. I think in the last 10 years of entrepreneurship, people over-index on product. Like if they build it, they will come, product like growth, etc.
They also way over-index on money.
Yeah.
My experience is that you get people to do more with less.
Intrinsic motivator. Yeah.
That's how you build a successful business. It's also how you build the right culture.
Yeah.
You constrain resources, not lavish them with them. You get the wrong attitude. I don't know about you guys, but Anthony, how big is Vinovest now?
We are 27 people.
Okay. So, and Luis, you've grown a big company already. So you all know there's a difference between going from, just yourself to 3 people to 10 people. I think the jump from 10 to 30 is yet another one. And then it's like 30 to call it 70, and then north of 70 is like a massive change. And your role as entrepreneur, founder, CEO shifts tremendously as you get north of, let's just call it 50 instead of 70, as you get north of 50. Because the first 30 people who joined are way different than the last 30 who joined that took you from 70 to 100. Right? You've already proven, hopefully anyway, you've proven there's product market fit. You've proven there's demand. You've proven that people care about what you're doing. The first 30 people, nobody knows. They just believe in your story, and they like the story, and they believe in the mission. And so, that shift is something.
I want to switch gears here a little bit. Oh, go ahead, please.
Yeah, no. So I'm just connecting some dots here. So there's this concept called the Dunbar's number, no? That is,
yes.
When there's more than 100 people, then you have to create a myth or a story for the next, 1,000 people to believe in. And I think that's also in the book Sapiens, no, from Yuval Noah. So yeah, I completely believe in that. So it's not just for the first 30, but after that, you have to still be a super good storyteller for the next, 1,000 people to join that.
100%. In fact, the big change for me, and I'd be lying if I said it wasn't frustrating to a degree, was having to recognize that my storytelling had to be more internal than external once we got north of 100, right? Like that. I was like, wait a second, I'm pitching to the wrong crowd here. I got to keep reminding people why they're here, what our mission is, what we're doing, what we're trying to accomplish, and why it's so important. Because the people who joined north of 100, they joined for a good paycheck and quote unquote security or stability or some other reason, but it wasn't because they necessarily believed we were changing the world like the first 30 people did. So it's Dunbar's number is a real thing, by the way.
Yeah, I totally agree, and it's that constant reminder of the story too, especially internally, right? It's like it's not just all right, day one onboarding, right? Your first 90 days. It's first 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, like every single day. That's something that I've started to learn more and more, especially now, right? Like tough times in the world. People are struggling with things outside of work, inside of work, external, right? A lot of crazy things going on. And it's like, what can really help to ground someone and help them remember why they're here, right? Why they want to be here when they have many other options. So that definitely resonates me with like what you said with the audience being more internal than external sometimes.
Speaking of story, like something that some prolific angels and investors, like Jason Calacanis, for example, in his book Angel, he's like, I'm only investing in the Bay Area. And all three of you have come outside of the Bay Area and have built great companies. And I think, well, Luis, I think you'll build a great company in addition to your first company. Like Luis is in Mexico City. Eric, I think you're in Nashville. Is that right? And Zhang, you're in LA. LA was, I don't know if you've heard these in circles, Zhang, but like people will say, if you're going to start a startup and the best VCs and the best engineers are only a plane ride away, like why would you do it in LA? So my point is how have you guys taken that into account that you're in a not tier one city, air quotes there? And if so, how have you overcome that? Because the reality is guys, I'm so bullish on places like Nigeria or Mexico or Colombia, where the best there's really smart people there, but they might have a mental block of like, I'm not from the right fucking city, which I think is personally is bullshit. But like, is there something you told yourself or others?
It wasn't always though, Gino. It wasn't always. It really was that if you weren't in the Bay Area or LA or Boston or Chicago, you were going to have a really hard time. And that was true when I moved to Nashville 20 years ago, and I moved here from the Bay Area.
Yeah.
Like I started an online home grocery delivery business, and we were the first quote unquote venture funded deal of what was a new angel group in Nashville called the Nashville Capital Network. Mm-hmm. Right? Like Nashville's, in addition to being Music City, they're the healthcare capital of the world. Mm. And, healthcare investors are very different from early stage technology. Healthcare investors want to know what cash flow was last quarter, right? Like, for your startup, is it medical services just a different game, and medical devices is a whole nother thing altogether. And so, it was really hard 20 years ago, even probably close to 10 years ago, to get funded outside of a major quote unquote tech hub, mm-hmm. right? That's not true today. And I think that started to change, give or take 5 or 6 years ago. And it's accelerated. So I don't think, anyone who says they're disadvantaged now by not being in the Bay Area, I think is using that as a crutch.
Yeah.
And that is because the VCs themselves have realized that they need to be in more places. Like, so, and talent has great, all sorts of bad things about the pandemic. But a silver lining was that people left those areas and realized that life was good in other places. And now there's talent in areas where, I should say, there's more talent now in areas where you didn't used to have that same level of concentration. And so it's a big difference.
Yeah, and I think I have used it into as an advantage now that I'm pitching investors. Different things around. So for me, being a Latin American entrepreneur, it's in the past 10 years, like the entrepreneur world didn't exist in Mexico City, Mm-hmm. So building a company, it was super hard. So we are more like resilient. We know how to do a lot of things without like almost any cash. Mm. So in that sense, it's easier to do, bootstrapping of different things. And at the same time, there's at least for the moment, it's an arbitrage of salaries that you can do if you are building a company. So I'm using like, I can, make the same thing as Masterworks, but I will be, my salary cost will be probably 1/3 because almost all people will be in Latam. So there's a lot of advantages if you know how to point them. But at the same time, there's some people that still have this lag. For me, it has been super easy to speak with the international investors, but difficult to speak with the local investors. Like local investors are saying like, but how come that if you are, Latin American, you're going to be building an international company? And I'm saying like after COVID, you can do everything. It's like, it's going to be that way. It doesn't matter where you are, but it has been super difficult with the local investors and very different with international ones.
And then when you say local, do you mean like Mexican investors and VCs?
Yeah, and it's probably more Mexico, because I have been speaking with Chile and Argentinian, and they also understand the international parts. Yeah.
Hey, Luis, have you met Grant Taylor at all in Mexico City?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, he runs a company called Quotanda, which was based there. Just wondering, just a buddy of mine. Sorry.
So it doesn't sound like location matters anymore. And part of the reason I loved, what I saw at Cubic and with you, Luis, is, well, you've run successful Web 2 companies before, and this is kind of like 2.5. And going back to that perception shift, people are going to think that this is just a Latin American company. But the reality is art travels. Like, art goes from gallery to gallery to gallery to gallery all over the world. And so the TAM is not just Latin America. And the investors who want to invest in this stuff is not just Latin America. And so that's where I thought like the alpha was, and which I thought was really savvy with your business. So talking about location, so there's implications with hiring and implications for fundraising. What about like brand building? Do you see any ways that you could go slower or fall short because of where the company has started, or are you going to be international at the gate, Luis?
So, I mean, that's a good question. I think I probably it's 50-50. So we have been creating everything in English since the beginning. Mm-hmm. So, and we probably like 90% of our investors are not from Mexico. So it has been working. But at the same time, it's really difficult for people living in a place to actually think internationally all the time.
Yeah.
So for instance, okay, let's do a partnership with someone for a museum, and you always think about a Mexican museum. So I think it's more about getting that into the culture of the people working in the company, to always think internationally. That's the difficult part, because you always get with the local stuff first, and it's the easier one because you have your network and it's really easy. But I don't know, probably it's just about culture and then building more relationship with international investors or international people all around. So I have been like super, for me, it has been like super important to get international investors, to have people, in Europe and in America for building this international company. And for that, not only to look at as a Latin American, but the international company.
I'm there with you. I think like just having a cap table or, advisors or people who you can rely on that are from those different cultures and countries who can give you those perspectives. Super important, right? Because, we all grew up one way or the other. And as much as we try to understand someone else, it's never the same. And I've definitely found that and experienced building Vinovest, since our wines from all around the world, right? It's France, Italy, Latin America, California. Customers are everywhere too. And so are our employees, right? It's something that has to be default global on day one. And for someone who maybe just grew up in their town and never left the country, right? Or, never had much experience, it's hard to kind of think or meet someone with very different perspectives on how to do things.
Yeah, the world's globalizing really fast. I think, Eric, you appreciate this. Not 1 year have I heard of so much hype around soccer in the U.S., and this is anecdotal. However, it happens in many places in the world, in the public eye. At any given time, 2 to 6% of the Billboard Hot 100 is non-English. That's never happened before. At any given time, to the top 10 Netflix top 10 is non-English, and that's never happened before. And same with NBA draft classes too. They're increasingly not from the U.S. And in tech, I love to see an example like the company Thiel. They were global from day one, and they made $100 million in a year. Are you guys shifting towards this global mindset, or are you more focused on your core market first, crush that, and then expanding?
Well, I mean, for us, it's easy to say we're just really focused on the core market because of the nature of our business, which is U.S. retirement, right? So I have the market is so large, $30+ trillion. I have no real desire to go try and figure out Australia's retirement system or Finland's retirement system or Mexico's retirement system, right? So for us, by default, we're going to be focused here. Now, the assets that we could make available to our customers are global. That's different.
What are you, Anthony?
For us, we started in the US, and just by default, anybody can invest. So there have been countries that have kind of been pulling us. Japan, for example, very unexpected, but is actually our third largest country behind the US and Canada. And we had no idea, right? It's like, oh my God, why are 15% of our users coming from Japan, and they're referring each other at a 5x higher rate than our US customers? Like, what is it?
But here's my question, Anthony. Here's my question for you: is it the wine or the whiskey for Japan?
It's the wine. That was even before we had the whiskey, because having Japanese whiskey on board would make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But it was something that was just like one person found it on Google. This person was very popular, had a bunch of other friends, and the network kind of grew. And we don't have Japanese language support. We don't have Japanese currency support. It was something that is just still, a bit of a surprise to me. But after just talking to some of our customers, it was like, all right, like, seems very enticing, very sexy, but we had to actually practice a lot of restraint and being like, let's get the US down to where we think we can really properly do it justice first. And even though there is this really fast growing, exciting segment of our business that can be shiny, can potentially be very profitable, we know it's there. We know it's not going to go away. But we just don't want to divert our focus, right? Because, establishing a Japanese bank subsidiary, right? Localizing, finding local employees, right? All of that is a lot of time and resources, and it'll happen. But we had to kind of say, like, hey, let's pump the brakes a little bit on that.
Guys, we're coming up on time. Oh yeah, go ahead, Luis, please.
Yeah. No, I think also like nowadays you can use this so the local and international perspectives in different convenience. So for instance, for us, it's like we are getting our company unregulated in the US, but we are getting probably like developers from Argentina. No, but at the same time, we are all our language is in English. So it's, you can use nowadays. You can use different things, local or international, depending on what you need or want, and get an advantage from that.
It's such a unique thing. I started my first company and I couldn't afford US developers. So I went on this site called Elance, which is now Upwork. And, I think when I was 18 working at a day job that paid like $12 an hour, I get a developer for $8. So like I'm in the green if I hire them. And that's now accelerated 10 years past. And so it's a beautiful thing to see. Companies serving global customers, hiring globally, less so raising globally. But I think that'll change soon. Anthony, Eric, Luis, thank you so much for joining me. This was a ton of fun. And Eric, it's nice meeting you. And hopefully we'll get people investing in ways that their grandparents couldn't. And I think these 3 ways, art, wine, and a creative IRA is much better than what was afforded to us before.
I agree. Everybody should invest out of their IRA.
Correct. Plug time. Go ahead.
It's great to meet you. Chino, thanks for including me. Anthony, good to see you.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Nice to meet you guys.
Thanks so much.
This is fun. See ya.